going to talk about superstitions. It is almost impossible to trace the origins of many superstitions, even though they are fairly common to the whole world. The human being seeks the cause for everything that happens, and when the cause is not easily discernible, especially if the happening is something out of the ordinary or something that affects the course of human life, the mind tends to conclude that the cause was some prior happening or incident. For example, if a black cat crosses one's path, and very soon after that the person has an accident, it was the black cat that caused the bad luck. Now the human sees a relationship between the two events that does not really exist. If one puts his left shoe on first in the morning and has bad luck that day, the person concludes that if he had put his right shoe on first, he would have good luck, and thus a superstition originates. Now some superstitions, no doubt, have their origin in the efforts of parents to discipline their children. For example, if you leave food on your plate, bad luck will follow. If you eat the point of your pie last, you will get your wish. Now many children will leave the crust of their pie uneaten, but will eat it to have a wish fulfilled. Now it is bad luck to kill a hop toad. Toads are beneficial, for they eat harmful insects. Now perhaps it would be better if the superstitions that have survived in our traditions could be forgotten. Most of them are the result of ignorance. It is an astonishing fact that most people in the world, regardless of environment, race, religion, or education, are superstitious to some degree. Education helps to destroy superstition, for superstition is born of ignorance and lack of reason. Now many superstitions are harmful, for they cause foolish fears that may do harm to the minds of people who believe them. Now the fluttering of a bird at the window of a home could arouse fear in the mind of one who believes it to be an omen of death. Now in my early childhood I heard from an old lady that when the lily in the corner of our yard grew up in 4 stalks in the spring, instead of the usual 3, there was sure to be a death in our family. I looked forward to each spring with great fear that the lily might grow up in 4 stalks. I even dug off the topsoil, hoping that I found 4 stalks starting to grow. I might cut one of them off and thus prevent a death. It is wrong to burden the mind of a child with such foolish fear when the child's mind should be filled with happy experiences. Now the superstitions that follow are offered as mere curiosities with the hope that no reader will take them seriously. They are merely examples of odd beliefs that became a part of oral tradition. They do not reflect the character of the people of any particular region, except that some of them reflect the environmental influences which are found in the mountains and in rural living. Now they should be entertaining, but they must never serve as guides for living. The student of folklore should find it interesting to attempt to trace the origins of some of these superstitions. Now for example, why is it considered unlucky for a black cat to cross your path? What is the significance of the black cat in folk beliefs? Why does a witch sometimes take the form of a black cat? Why is it unlucky to leave a house by a door other than the one through you enter? How did such a silly belief originate? Why is it bad luck to spill salt? But the bad luck may be avoided if you throw some salt over your left shoulder. Now, it is bad luck to kill a cricket. If someone gives you flowers for planting and you thank them for the flowers will die. You should always leave a house by the same door you enter, or you will have bad luck. Now, if a picture is tilting on the wall, it means bad luck. It will bring good luck if on New Year's Day you cook cabbage and black-eyed peas together and put a dime in them. If the birds get the combings from your hair, they will make a nest of it, and you will always have a headache. If on New Year's Day a male enters your house first, it means good luck. If a female enters first, it means bad luck. Now if you are touched by a broom while someone is sweeping, it means bad luck. If you sweep a circle around a boy or girl, he or she will never marry. If you drop a spoon, a female guest is coming. If you drop a fork, a male guest is coming. If you wear a penny in your shoe, it will bring good luck. It is good luck to find a penny. It is good luck to find a button if you keep it. If it rains on your wedding day, it is a sign that you will shed many tears during your married life. When you are moving, it is bad luck to move parsley roots. It is bad luck to accept parsley roots from anyone. It is bad luck to find an open safety pin. To have good luck, always get out of bed on the right side. Put your right shoe on first to have good luck. It is bad luck to bring a hoe in the house. If you kill a toad, your cow will give bloody milk. It is bad luck to raise an umbrella in the house. And if you spill salt, you must throw some salt over your left shoulder to avoid bad luck. It is bad luck to rock a rocking chair with no one in it. A howling dog means death. If 4 stalks of a lily come up to bloom, someone in the family will die that year. If a person cuts out a window of his house and makes a door, someone in the family will die that year. If anyone eats fruit that has grown in a graveyard, he will die before the year's out. It is bad luck to step on the cracks in a boardwalk. Now, if a woman cuts out a dress for herself on Friday and does not finish it on the same day, she will die before the year's out. It is bad luck to carry an axe in the house. Now, the dead must always be buried to face the rising sun. A storm follows the death of old people. Nature is mourning. If the walls creak, it means a death soon. It is bad luck to watch someone out of sight. If the thread knots while one is sewing, it means the one who is sewing will die. It is bad luck to tell someone goodbye. It is bad luck to find a 5-leaf clover. It is good luck to find a 4-leaf clover, however. It is bad luck for these persons to use the same match to light their cigarettes. 3 lighted lamps on one table means bad luck is coming. If you drop a dish rag, someone who's hungry is coming. Now, when the hands on the clock are straight up and down, put a cake in the oven and it will always come out well. If someone jumps over you, your growth will stop. If you eat pie on Tuesday, you will become ill. If you eat fish and drink milk at the same time, you will be poisoned. If you step over a broom, you will never be married. If a bird flies in the window, someone in the family will die. If a picture is broken in the home, one in the picture will die. If you receive a knife as a gift, you must give the donor a penny to prevent a broken friendship. If your right hand itches, you will receive money. If your left hand itches, you will shake hands with a stranger. If you break a mirror, you will have bad luck for 7 years. If a baby looks into a mirror before it is a year old, it will not live to maturity. It is bad luck to sweep the floor after the sun goes down. It is bad luck for a black cat to cross the path in front of you. It is bad luck to pass people on stairways. It is bad luck for a hen to crow. It is bad luck for a girl to whistle. If a child's fingernails are cut before it is a year old, it will be a thief. If you sing before breakfast, you will cry before supper. It is bad luck to sell a hive of bees. Now, the hooting of an owl close to the house means bad luck. Playing with a comb will cause a child to stammer. When 2 persons are walking, it is a sign that they will quarrel. They will quarrel if they walk on different sides of a tree or other object. Now, the bad luck can be averted if they say bread and butter. When you buy a horse, it is good luck to change his name. If you cannot find a lost article, spit in the palm of your hand while saying, "Spitter, spitter, spider, tell me where that name of the article is, and I'll give you a drink of cider." Hit the spittle with your right forefinger, follow the direction where most of the spittle goes, and you will find the article. If you look at the moon through a knothole, you will never be married. If 2 forks are at a place sitting on a table, the one who sits there will get married. If there's a feather crown in your pillow, it is a sign that you are going to heaven when you die. When you pull a tooth, drive it in an apple tree, and good luck will follow. Lightning struck wood burned in the cooking stove will cause the house to be struck by lightning. Now, if you carry a rabbit's foot in your pocket, you will have good luck. If you breathe on a bird's egg, the ants will eat it. Now hide a tooth under a rock and go back later, and you will find money. If you take the last piece of anything, you will be an old maid unless you kiss the cook. Now if a corpse is very old, there will not be another death in the house for that year, if the corpse is very cold. Now the man of the house must set out to ramble a rose if it is to live. When you find a hairpin, press it together. If the ends are even, you will meet a boy. If uneven, you will meet a girl. If you eat from an uneven plate, you will have bad luck. If you shorten a baby's dress in May, you are shortening its days. It is good luck to take a dog with you when you move, but bad luck to take a cat. When a horseshoe is hung with the open end up, your luck will not run out. A rabbit crossing your path will bring good luck. To meet a cross-eyed person is a sign of good luck. To lay your hand on the hump of a hunchback person is the best of luck. Now this rhyme should be kept in mind while out walking. See a pin and pick it up, and all the day you'll have good luck. See a pin and let it lie, bad luck to you will fly. Now it is a sign of good luck to open the Bible at random and find the words verily, verily on the page. Now when you get a small hen's egg, throw it over the house to avoid bad luck. When you find a 5-leaf clover, you can give the bad luck away by giving it to another person, and he will have good luck. To count the teeth in a comb brings bad luck. It is bad luck to drop a comb, but put your foot on the comb that has been dropped and your luck will turn. When you return to the house for something that has been forgotten, sit down in a chair before leaving again to avoid bad luck. Now when you shake hands 2 times and saying goodbye, do it again to avoid bad luck. 13 people at the table brings bad luck. Passing under a ladder brings bad luck. Looking at the new moon through trees brings bad luck. Now when playing cards, it is bad luck to pick up the cards one at a time as they are being dealt. It brings bad luck to play cards across the grain of the table. It is bad luck to sit in a rocking chair to play cards. For a lamp chimney to break in the hand without apparent cause is a sign of bad luck. It is bad luck to change a baby's name. It is bad luck to close an open gate. To turn a coffin in the house will bring bad luck. It is bad luck to postpone a wedding. It is bad luck to carry a fishing pole into the house. When hunting, it is bad luck to cross a different part of the fence from the person in front of you. It is unlucky to throw a gift away. Now, to break something on New Year's Day will bring bad luck for the rest of the year. It is unlucky to marry a person born in the same month. It is bad luck to spill ink. Now, to wash the palm of a baby's hand will wash his luck away. It is bad luck for 2 persons to make a bed. It is bad luck to burn bread. It is bad luck to count the boxcars in a train. It is bad luck to count the carriages in a funeral procession. Now, if sassafras is burned in the fireplace, bad luck will follow. Now, to shake the tablecloth after sundown brings bad luck. To climb out a window and not climb back will bring bad luck. If you sneeze while putting on your shoes, you must go back to bed to avoid bad luck. To lean a broom against the bed will bring bad luck. To sit with crossed feet in a rocking chair will bring bad luck. To dream of gathering eggs is a sign of bad luck. To move into a house before the fire which has been made by the former dwellers burns out brings bad luck. You can turn aside to bad luck when a black cat crosses your path by spitting on its tracks. It is bad luck for a piece of bread to fall with the buttered side up. If a clock stops without being run down, a dear friend will die at the hour at which the clock stopped. If you hear 3 knocks at the door, someone in your family will die. A fallen star is a sign of death. If a bat flies into the room, it is a sign of death. When a cedar tree that has been set out has limbs long enough to cover the coffin of the person who set it out, he will die. After a funeral, whichever leaves the graveyard first will be the next to be buried there. If a field grave sinks quickly, there will be another death in the family soon. Hang your hat on a doorknob, and you are making the sign of a death in the family. If a board warps in the porch, it is a sign of death in the family. If a peach tree blooms twice in the year, it is a sign of death in the family. If an apple tree with blossom on it falls, it means a death. It is bad luck to lend money in a card game. To change bad luck while playing cards, put on your hat. To change bad luck while playing cards, exchange seats with another player. To sit in a card game with a cross-eyed man will bring bad luck. It is bad luck to start a journey on Friday. Now, Friday is an unlucky day to start anything you cannot complete. To polish your shoes on your feet brings bad luck. When you stumble over an object, go back and walk over it without stumbling to avoid bad luck. It is bad luck for a whippoorwill to light on the roof of a house. To kill a spider brings bad luck. For a picture to drop out of the frame means bad luck. It is bad luck to cut the fingernails on Thursday. It is bad luck for an animal to die in one's hand. It is bad luck to boast of immunity from sickness, but the bad luck can be avoided by knocking on wood. It is bad luck to count the buttons on another's clothes. It is bad luck to visit a graveyard after dark. It is bad luck to take anything from a graveyard. It is bad luck to step or walk over a grave. It is bad luck to meet a hearse. It is bad luck for the head of the family to drown a cat. To mend a garment you are wearing brings bad luck. It is bad luck to change a garment that you have put on wrong side out. A winding sheet made when the melted wax clings around the candle and hardens is a sign of death in the family. If a woman tears her wedding shoes, she will be beaten by her husband. If a pillow falls off the wedding bed, the one who lies on it first will die first. Whoever sleeps first on the wedding night will die first. As long as you keep some of the bread of your first wedded meal, you will never be in want. If a bride breaks her wedding ring, she will be a widow soon. If a wedding ring be lost, the couple will separate. To awaken the bride on her wedding morning is bad luck. Let her sleep as long as she will. Now, for a bride to put her bare feet on the floor on the night of the wedding is unlucky. If a bride puts on her left shoe first, her married life will be unhappy. If you go into a vacant house, throw a ball of yarn and say, "I pull who wins," the one you are to marry will answer you. Put the letters of the alphabet in a pan of water under your bed. The next morning, the letter of your future husband will be turned over. When two people meet on the stair steps, it is a sign of a wedding. Walk backwards 9 steps and you will see a hair the color of the person's hair you are to marry. Now, if the bridesmaid is older than the bride, she should wear something green, or else she may never marry. If a kettle of hot water is poured over the doorstep which the bride crosses, there will be another wedding in that house within the year. For good luck, the bride must wear something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue, and a gold dollar in her shoe. Now, 2 lovers will never agree after their marriage if both wipe their faces on the same towel. He who is needy when married will be rich when buried. If a boy and a girl meet by chance at a stile, they will be lovers. Now, put 3 holly leaves under your pillow at night and name each leaf. The one that is turned over in the morning will be your husband. Put a 4-leaf clover in the Bible. The man you meet while you are carrying it will be your husband. Now hold the bride's dress on your lap for 10 minutes, and you will be a bride within the year. On the first day of May, before sunrise, if you see a snail within a shell, your future husband will have a house. If the snail is outside the shell, he will have none. Sprinkle meal in front of the snail, and it will form the initial of the man you are to marry. Kiss a baby on the 9th day after its birth, and the next man you kiss will be your future husband. Go fishing on the first day of May. A bite means a bow. A catch means you will get a husband within the year. Put a pea pod with 9 peas over the door. If a married man comes under it first, you will not be married within the year. If a single man, you will be married. If you fall upstairs, you will not be married within the year. Eat the point of a piece of pie first, and you will be an old maid. If your stocking comes down, you will be an old maid. If you look under the bed, you will never marry. If anyone sweeps around you, you will never marry. When two young girls sleep together for the first time, if they tie their big toes together and the string is broken in the night, the one who has the shortest piece of string will marry first. The white spots on your nails tell how many lovers you will have. If you splash water on yourself while washing clothes, you will get a drunken husband. If you cannot make a good fire, you will not get a good husband. Here's a warning for the bride-to-be. Change your name and not the letter. Change for the worse and not the better. If you go barefooted, this rhyme may be useful. Stub your toe, kiss your thumb, kiss your beau before one. Walk around a wheat field on the first day of May, and you will meet your mate. Put a slice of wedding cake under your pillow for 7 nights, and the 7th night you will dream of your future husband. If a black cat takes up its home at a house, the unmarried daughters will have a good chance to marry. Now, if a bride wears another girl's garter when she is married, the girl will be married within the year. The number of nails in the horseshoe which you pick up will be the number of years until you are married. Now, on Halloween, if you can eat an apple that is suspended on a string from the ceiling, you will marry within the year. As many candles as are left on the birth cake after you blow once, that many years it will be till you are married. On the first day of May, look in a well, and you will see the face of your future husband. If you can blow the down from the dandelion in one blow, you will get the wish you make. If two persons who think the same thing at the same time hook their little fingers together and make a wish, the wish will come true. If you see the new moon over your right shoulder and make a wish, the wish will come true. When you find a 4-leaf clover, swallow it and make a wish, and the wish will come true. Now, a wish made in a bed never before slept in will come true. Sleep with the Bible under your head for 3 nights in a row, and you will dream of your future husband. When you see the first star at night, say, "Starlight, star bright, first star I see tonight. Wish I may, wish I might. Have the wish I wish tonight." Make a wish while putting a ring on another person's finger, at the same time stating how long the ring is to stay on. If the ring is not removed during that time, the wish will come true. Now, when 2 persons pull the wishbone off of the chicken, the one who gets the larger part gets the wish. Now, hang a wishbone over the front door, and the first man who passes under it is the man you will marry. Now, when you have put on a garment wrong side out, make a wish and it will come true. Save the tip end of the pie, make a wish as you eat it, and the wish will come true. When your dress skirt is turned up, spit on it and make a wish, and the wish will come true. If a pregnant woman passes her hands over her body, she will give a baby a birthmark. Now, a woman in labor should hold salt between her hands. Put sugar on the window to make the baby come. If a baby loses its shoe, it will be rich. Carry a newborn baby downstairs before it is carried upstairs, so that it will have success in life. The number of wrinkles on your forehead indicate the number of children you will have. If a baby's first fist does not close over money which is placed in its hand, it will always be poor. If the hand of a newborn baby be open, it will have a generous disposition. If it is closed, it will be stingy. If you see a man leading a horse with a side saddle on Sunday, it is sure there will be a birth in that neighborhood within the week. Your baby will resemble the person to whom you first carry it. In time of war, there will be more boys born than girls. When a newborn child is veiled, it will have the gift of second sight. Now, if anyone steps over a baby, it will not grow for a year. A child born on Christmas Day can understand the speech of animals, and you have a right to kiss a girl when she makes a face at you. Kiss a girl when you find her under the mistletoe. Kiss a girl when you find her under the wishbone of a chicken. Now, pare an apple in a single long strip, throw the peeling over your left shoulder, and it will form the initial of the first name of the person whom you will marry. Now, burn the match to the end, and it will make the initial of the first name of the man you are to marry. When you hear the first robin sing in the spring, sit down on a rock and take off your left stocking. If there is a hair in it, your sweetheart will call call on you soon. If you take the last piece of bread off the plate when it is not offered, you will never be married. But if you take it when it is offered, you will marry well. When your shoe is untied, someone is thinking of your love. Now if your thumb's turned back at the end, you will be a good housekeeper. Now shut your fist over your thumb for good luck. To cross your legs when playing cards will bring good luck. Sleep on mustard seeds and witches cannot bother you. For good luck, eat pancakes on Shrove Tuesday. Now if a horse is restless in the morning, witches have been riding it in the night. When a person sneezes, say God bless you, and it will bring good luck. Alright, we're going to talk about witchcraft. For over a period of half a century, I have recorded traditional stories of various kinds in West Virginia. In my boyhood, I heard many stories of witches and ghosts. Now, among the people in the community where I grew up, there was a strong belief in the reality of the supernatural. Now, anything out of the ordinary was likely to be accepted as a spiritual manifestation or a warning of some dire event to happen. There was numerous warnings of death, and messages from the spiritual world were common. This attitude was not a result of ignorance, but a sign of the people's strong faith in God, who had many mysterious ways of informing people how to live. Now, after all, if spirits communicated with living mortals in biblical times, could they not do the same today? Now, people firmly believed that the devil was still active and diligently striving to win souls away from God. Witches are people who have denied God and have sold themselves to the devil for his service. Therefore, the belief in witchcraft could be no sin. Becoming a witch, however, was the unforgivable sin. The belief that certain people had the God-given power to break the spells of witches was also in keeping with the religion of the people. Now, the belief in the existence of fairies who could dispel the harm done by witches was not accepted by the mountain people, who believed that good could come only from God. Now, in European folklore, fairies were benevolent spirits who came from another world, not from heaven. The Puritan influence in England had already banned the belief in fairy, and that influence was strong in America. Now, in many years of collecting folklore in West Virginia, I found that most elderly people who sang traditional songs also knew many traditional tales that had been handed down from earlier generations. I was given clues by many people, especially by students in my extension classes in various parts of the state, which led me to folk singers. Whenever I first visited an elderly person, I would make it known that I was trying to write down or put on the tape recorder stories that had been told of interesting things that had happened, especially stories of strange happenings. Now, people often were hesitant about telling stories of witches and ghosts for fear of being scoffed at by the listener. Too many for several reasons. The subject of witchcraft was almost a forbidden one. The person hearing the story might be tempted to try the black art, especially if the story revealed the secret of how to become a witch. There was also fear that the story might stir the devil to do great harm, for as one man said, "I tell you, the devil is still around, trying to draw people away from the Lord." Another deterrent was the fact that some of the witches in the stories had descendants who would be offended if the stories became known. Now, one woman asked me, "If you were one of these descendants, how would you like for people to say to you, 'I hear that your grandma was a witch'?" Only by promising to keep the names of the witches secret, and in some instances not to reveal the name of the storyteller, could I hear the story. Now, we present these witch tales, which we have found in West Virginia, simply as entertaining folk tales that have been heard by fireside listeners for many generations. We have no desire to influence anyone's belief in supernatural manifestations, but only suggest that the reader suspend his disbelief for a little time. As the poet Coleridge suggested to the readers of his poetry, and live temporarily in the book, Land of the Imagination. Of the many beliefs concerning witchcraft which we have found, all are to be found in the earliest accounts of witchcraft in various other lands. There is nothing new to be found in witchcraft in the region of West Virginia Hills. However, some of the beliefs concerning the power and activities which is found in England, Scotland, and on the continent, and even in Salem, Massachusetts, are not found in West Virginia. For example, I have never heard any mention of the meeting of the witches, called the Witches' Sabbath. when the witches gather on regular nights under the presidency of the devil to perform their black rites and reaffirm their subservience to the demon master. Now, this witch's Sabbath is well described by Nathaniel Hawthorne in his story, Young Goodman Brown. I have never found any mention of the belief that witches can control the weather, such as causing hail to fall by dipping branches in water and then flinging them in the air. One universal belief is that to become a witch, one must follow a certain ritual in calling the devil forth, and then one must sign a compact with the devil, so that the devil will give the mortal a servant to be with him to the end of his days on earth, at the end of which time the devil will claim his victim. We have found some very interesting variations of this ritual. For example, one must go to the top of the highest mountain just at sunset, taking his rifle along, and just as the sun is setting over the horizon, he must turn around 3 times, each time swearing against the divinity and shooting his rifle at the setting sun. He must do this on 3 consecutive evenings. On the 3rd evening after the ceremony is completed, the devil will appear with his big book and his iron pen. Then the mortal must sign his name in his own blood to make the compact with the devil. The time of the agreement may vary in number of years, but in most instances the mortal is not informed as to how long he will live. The compact stipulates that the devil will serve the mortal as long as he lives, but at the end of his earthly life the devil will take him off, body and soul, to hell. Now, another variation of the ritual is that one must take a part of each of his fingernails, a part of each of his toenails, a little bit of his skin cut from his body, a bit of his hair, and some prized possession. Just at midnight, these objects must be placed in a coal shovel and roasted over a fire. While these objects are roasting, the person must swear against the divinity. Now, when they have burned away to ashes, the devil will appear with loud cries and noises like the rattling of chains. In this case, as in all other forms of the ritual, an important part of the ceremony is the abjuration of God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost. And finally, one must sign the compact which makes the devil his servant as long as the mortal shall live on earth, at the end of which time the devil will take him to hell. Now, another interesting form of the ritual is this. Anyone who wishes to become a witch may do so by going to one who is already a witch. There was a certain old woman who had been a witch for years. She took the convert, who was a young woman about 20 years old, to an old spring in the north side of a mountain. She took a large handkerchief and spread it out on the water. Then she tied a knot in each of the 3 corners of the handkerchief, at the same time denouncing God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Ghost, while sprinkling some water on the convert. This was done 3 times until there were 3 knots, one in each of 3 corners of the handkerchief. Then the convert held the free corner, the one which was not knotted, and in her right hand she held the handkerchief and turned around 3 times, at the same time calling upon the devil to appear. When the devil appeared, he had a big book and an iron pen. It was necessary for the convert to draw some blood from her arm and sign her name in the book in her own blood. She then became a witch. Now, still another way to become a witch is to take your rifle to the top of the highest mountain just as the full moon appears over the horizon. Shoot your rifle with the rising full moon 3 times, each time swearing against God. Do this on 3 consecutive nights. On the 3rd night, the devil will appear with his book and pen. With a witch, you must sign your name in the book in your own blood. The devil will then serve as long as you live on earth, at the end of which time he will take you, body and soul, to hell. I have recorded other variations of the ritual, but they all follow the same general pattern. First, there is the abjuration, the swearing against the divinity. Second is the mysterious symbolic ritual to call the devil. And third is the signing of the compact in blood. Certain beliefs concerning the identity of witches are fairly universal. Some of these we have found in West Virginia. It is believed that a witch will have a mark on the body, often hidden, sometimes in the armpit, sometimes under the hair. A witch will have a certain look in the eyes called the evil eye, by means of which a spell can be cast on whomever the witch chooses to bewitch. The witch can cast spells on people to make them ill, even to cause death, and can cast spells on animals to make them ill, or to make them useless. A witch can cast a spell on a hunter's gun so that it will not shoot straight. The witch can make things appear suddenly where there was nothing before. She can hang up a rag and get milk from it, while at the same time her neighbor's cows will go dry. The witch can transform herself or himself and other people into various kinds of animals, usually a black cat. I have not heard of any specific modes of transportation used by witches. They simply move about and appear at different places suddenly and mysteriously. I have not heard any story in which a witch rides a broom. In retelling the witch tales as they were told to me, I have omitted names in many of them, or have substitute fictitious names. As the lady who told the story of Uncle Johnny said to me, I haven't told you his name, and I don't think I should, for he has relatives still living over there. In some stories, we have given the names of the victims of witchcraft, but we believe it is better not reveal the identity of the witches. Now, alright, we're going to talk about the white art. There are certain people who are said to be gifted with powers to do things which ordinary people cannot perform. They have the power of healing, of finding underground water, of finding lost articles, of prophesying, and of communicating with the spiritual world. This power to perform beneficent acts is sometimes called the white art. It has nothing in common with the black art, the name given to witchcraft. The white art is considered to be a special gift from God. A baby born with a veil, the term given to the fetal caul over its face, is supposed to have the power of prophecy. A posthumous child, one born after the death of its father, is said to have the power to cure certain ills and to prophesy. The seventh son of a seventh son has unusual powers, such as the power to prophesy and to heal the sick. However, any person who has great faith may be capable of healing illness or stopping blood by means of prayer. The belief in the efficacy of prayer is, of course, religion, but sometimes religion and superstition are confused. For example, many people believe that one with great faith can stop bleeding by reciting the blood verse in the Bible, the 6th verse of the 16th chapter of Ezekiel. This belief in the efficacy of prayer is a manifestation of the person's religious faith. But when one insists that a man must not tell another man what the passage is, nor must a woman tell another woman, or the saying of the biblical passage will not be effective, it becomes superstition. Now, the practice of locating underground water, often called water witching, has been common among people all over the world since ancient times. Even today, it is a fairly common practice in all parts of rural America. I would like to share my own experience with this practice. Now, when my country home was built, I had a water well drilled by a competent driller. I told him where I wanted the well located so that it would be convenient for piping the water into the house. He drilled to a depth of about 215 feet, but found very little water. A year later, I secured the services of another well driller, hoping he might find a better supply of water, although I was not aware of his method of locating underground water. This man came with a pitchfork and began to walk about the premises not far from the house. He held the pitchfork by both of his hands so that the butt end extended in front of him and parallel to the ground. He found 3 or 4 locations where the butt end of the fork bent down toward the ground, but one of the locations seemed to attract it more than others. That is where he drilled, and at a depth of 100 feet he found an abundance of water, which has to date supplied my household with water for 7 years without fail. I asked the gentleman if he thought anyone could find water with his forked stick. He said, no, only certain people. He then showed me how to hold the fork so that I could try it to find out whether I was one who could do it. Imagine my amazement when I felt the butt end of the fork pulling towards the ground just as it had in his hand. Now later I cut 2 pieces of coat hanger wire about 2 feet long each and bent them into a 90-degree angle. I held one wire in each hand so that one side of the angle was perpendicular while the other pointed forward horizontally. Now when I passed over the locations where the pitchfork had reacted, the wires turned inward to touch each other. My son, who is a professor of physics in a well-known college, scoffed at the practice, but when he tried it and got the same results, he had no scientific explanation. Now, a 50-page booklet entitled The Divining Rod, A History of Water Witching by Arthur J. Ellis was published by the United States Department of the Interior, Government Printing Office, Washington, D.C. in 1938. It contains a bibliography of more than 500 printed sources of information dated from the 16th century to the 20th century on the subject of water witching. Another power that some people were reputed to possess was the ability to break spells that had been cast by witches. This was not a God-given power, but one that was acquired by learning it from another person who knew the secret of the power. Now, these people were called witch doctors. Now, the reader will find several instances among the following stories in which the spell of the witch was broken by the witch doctor. Now, in some cases, the witch doctor, after performing the act which breaks the spell of the witch, murmurs some strange words, so that the spell of the witch cannot return. The words are always unintelligible to any listener, and no one has ever tried to explain them to me. Alright, we're going to talk about Uncle Johnny bewitches the cows. Now, it is unusual for a man to be a witch. Almost all of the witches in the stories we have recorded are women. However, I have heard many stories about the old witch man known as Uncle Johnny, and of the mischievous things he did. I have never heard the term warlock used in any stories in West Virginia. One summer I sat on the porch with Miss Robert Petrie in Raleigh County and listened to her stories about Uncle Johnny and other witches. Now, in telling this story, she uses the word funny to mean strange. When she says we thought it was funny, she means we thought it was strange. Here's the story in her own words. This old man called Uncle Johnny came up to my Aunt Eliza Morris and wanted to borrow one of her churns. He said, "Liz, I want to get one of your churns." And she said, "Now, Uncle Johnny, I'm afraid to let you. I can't let you have that churn. I've only got two, and I have to churn every day. I get so much milk, and I've got to keep my cream in one ready to churn the next day, and keep my buttermilk in the other." Well, he went off in a huff. He said, "All right, madam, all right. You can drink your milk, but I'll eat your butter." Well, she said her husband had hewed out a nice bowl, a big concern, and she said that when she took her butter off there was much of it that she gave it to the neighbors and used it for cooking and all purposes. So that evening when he went off, she started churning as usual. She got everything ready, and she churned 2 long hours, but no butter. She said just foam would come on that milk, and finally she just set it aside. Well, it went on that way for about a week. She said her geese would come up just dancing like women and carrying on terrible, and the cows at last just began to give bloody milk. She never used the milk anymore after that, but she'd milk it and give it to the hogs. So her husband went to an old man named Jimmy Webb. Now he was supposed to take the witch spell off of things, and when her husband went up there and told Uncle Jimmy Webb what had happened, he said, "Now you go home and tell Liz to milk tonight and in the morning, and set the milk where it will get thick as usual, and I'll come down tomorrow evening and churn for her." Well, she said that about 4:30 or 5 in the evening. She looked, and here came this old man walking on his cane, and he had 9 hickory switches in under his arm. And he says, "Liz, I've come down to churn for you." She said she got him a cloth and spread it over his lap and set the churn out on the little porch. And she said he'd begin this churning. He'd churn with his left hand, and he'd whip the churn with one of those switches in his right hand. She said he'd whip one switch up, and he'd lay it aside and get another one until he'd whipped all 9 of those switches up on that churn. She said she never saw such an amount of butter that there was in that one churning of milk. And he said, "Now, Liz, what I've done won't be worth anything if you lend them anything off this place. It won't be long now till they'll come here to borrow something." Well, she said it wasn't but just about half an hour before here came one of the girls. She came running and she said, "Pap hurt his back awful bad. He wants to borrow some turpentine." They didn't have many doctors then, and all families kept simple remedies like turpentine, castor oil, and things like that. She had to refuse him. She said, "I'm sorry, but I don't have the turpentine." When Uncle Jimmy Webb had finished the churning, he went around every cow and murmured something, and he said, "Now, I don't think you'll have any more trouble." And she didn't. But this is the part of the story that I thought was funny. There was an old man that lived down at Horse Creek, and he and his brother, who was my first husband's father, they owned a lot of land that extended out to the mountain that was called Cherry Pine Mountain. And they were having a log rolling. They didn't realize the value of a big poplar tree. Then. The ground was all they cared for, and they would cut these big trees down and burn them. Maybe they'd saw out some wood and then make some fences. They'd just roll the trees down and make fences. They had a big gathering of men working, and this old Uncle Johnny was there. The man who was telling this said that they had done a wonderful day's work and had a big field cleared up. And the man said, "Now you've done an awful good day's work, and we certainly appreciate it. Now we'll roll these logs down, and then we'll go and eat supper." The men had their cant hooks under the logs, apprising under the logs. He said that all of a sudden this old Uncle Johnny that I've told you about gave a big scream and leaped in the air. He didn't have any undershirt on, just a faded cotton shirt. And when he commenced screaming and writhing like someone in agony, they could see the white welts through that shirt, just bloody welts all over his back. And he said they had to carry him out of there. And he said, I never did know what caused that, but I never saw a man suffer so in my life. Now this man who told this didn't know anything about the churn and how Uncle Jimmy Webb had whipped the spell off. But of course, we know what caused the welts. It happened just as Uncle Jimmy was whipping the churn. Alright, now, Uncle Johnny frightens Miss Dickens. Now, Uncle Johnny, the witch man, was known to play pranks on people, sometimes for malice, but more often for fun. Will Dickens knew Uncle Johnny and could tell many stories about him. I sat on the porch with Mr. Dickens in Raleigh County in the summer of 1960 and heard him tell how Uncle Johnny frightened Miss Dickens with snakes. Now, my wife wanted to go out and pick some beans. It was along in September, and I was cutting my corn and taking care of the fodder. When my wife started up the hill, the old man, Uncle Johnny, said, "Don't go up there. Something will catch ye." He was a-sitting on the porch there, and they's a big rock at the foot of the hill. When she went to pass that rock pile and wasn't a-listening to him, the snakes got a-jumping out of that pile of rocks, just a-poking their heads out and a-licking their tongues. I heard her scream, and I went to her. Now, Buddy, she throwed down her basket and the sack she had in the basket, and she run down home, and him just a-sitting there. It was an awful hot day, and me and my dad went up and moved that rock pile. We took us a gun to kill the snakes, and he was about 3 hours of moving that rock pile. And they wasn't a blessed thing in there, but just a few little bugs like them that stays in the ground. My dad was mad, and he was gonna cut him up with an axe. Well, the old man said, "You'll get into something worse than that." Now, we're going to talk about the death and burial of Uncle Johnny. The following story is another I heard about Uncle Johnny from Will Dickens. Now, the old man died in a few days. Johnny Dickens, my brother, why, he made caskets all the time, homemade caskets. And he always took a stick and measured the man and then measured the casket. And he forgot that measuring stick, as he called it, and left it in the barn. When he hauled the old man off to the grave to bury him, we started down the road with him. My brother had a good mule team, and we got right to the mouth of the creek down here where there is a little ford there. Now, that wagon just began to mash down. There wasn't nothing but just a little gravel in that creek, and the water wasn't over a foot deep, and them mules couldn't pull that wagon across the creek. Now, my brother called on them 3 or 4 times, but they couldn't move it. My brother's pretty wicked, and he said, he's always been a witch. I'm going to throw him out in there. And me and Bert Dickens and him started to pick up the casket and roll her out. and them mules just started up and never gave us any more trouble. He's buried right down there." Mr. Dickens pointed to a small graveyard not far down the road. "When we get back, my brother that made the casket said, 'I forgot that measuring stick out in the barn.' He went out and got it and throwed it under a patch of brush. The next morning when he got up, there sitting on the porch beside the door was that measuring stick. And he jumped on the boy, Grady Dickens, and he said, 'How come you bring that measuring stick back after I throwed it away?' The boy said, 'I never saw it, Dad. I didn't know you'd throwed it away.' And he throwed it away again, and the next day it was back a-sitting beside the door. And he took that measuring stick and said, 'I will get shed of it.' And he took it up this crooked holler and took it by the end and just throwed it as far as he could throw it. When he got back, there sat his measuring stick, and he took it up to the head of the holler where he was a-digging his coal and shot it down with dynamite. That's all the way he could get shed of it." All right, we're going to talk about the Black Cat Murderers. Narrators of folk tales, especially tales of witches or ghosts, usually begin with the statement that the story they are about to tell is true. They even give names of people and places. Now, Miss Robert Petrie, the woman who told the story of how Uncle Johnny put the spell on the cows, told me the story of the girl who became a black cat. She prefaced her story by saying, "I don't know if you'd be interested in this story or not." Now, the woman who told me this didn't tell it for the truth, and I'm not telling it to you for the truth. But it was a legend, and where it took place, I don't even know. She then began her story. There was a man who lived in a big city and was wealthy. He was invested and loaned money. He invested and loaned money, and he went bankrupt. But while he had this money, he had bought thousands of acres of timberland just to keep from paying taxes on his money. Now, after he lost his money by investments, he told his wife and daughter they had only the one girl who was in society and had all kinds of jewelry and things. Now, we've got to sell all this to pay the creditors. There's only one show for us, he said. I might regain some of my losses by the timberland that I have. If we can get a meal and go out there and stay, I might get back on my feet again. The girl didn't like the idea and she fought against it. Oh, she just fought bitterly. But he went ahead and sold her furs and jewelry and got pretty well out of debt. Then he bought a big sawmill and got a crew of men, and they went to work cutting the timber. He built a nice bungalow for himself, his wife, and daughter. Now at the mill, which was just a little piece below the house, he built a shanty for the watchmen to stay in. The slabs and the fall off from the timber had to be burned every night to keep them out of the way, and there had to be a watchman there so that he would have the fire going and have the mill in operation for the next day. Now one morning he went down to see why the fire hadn't been built, and he found the watchman lying there with his throat cut, just like somebody had cut it all to pieces, and the watchman was dead. Well, he got another man, and the same thing happened to him. He didn't want to have any more men killed like that, and that mill was idle. One evening, a man came along leading a pet bear. Now, when I was a child, every year at our one-room school, there used to be a man coming through leading a pet bear, and my father would keep them overnight, for he had a rather nice home down the road there, and my father would keep almost everyone who passed that way at night. This man that had the bear asked to stay overnight at the house of the man who owned the sawmill. Now he said, "Well, I've not got any room in my house at all for you to stay, but I have a house down there at my sawmill with a good bed in it and plenty to eat. But I'm not sure you want to stay there." Then he told him what had happened to these other two men who had been killed and said, "I've not asked anybody to stay there since the last one was killed." Now the man patted his bear on the head and said to him, "We're not afraid, are we, Fido?" And the bear growled and nudged up against him. It was just a regular pet. He took the man down there and showed him where the things were to cook, and showed him the bed things, and said, "Now don't you let anybody in here tonight. Now you lock the door, and even if I come, don't you let me in here." The next morning he went down, and the man opened the door. He had his breakfast ready, and everything seemed normal. But the man told him what had happened in the night. He said he was sitting there after he ate his supper, and he had fed the bear, and he was so tired that he said he dozed off to sleep before he went to bed. He said the bear was lying there at his feet when he heard a little rattling sound at the door, and through the keyhole of that door came a long black cat. It just leaped right in, and when it got close to him, it just gave a great big squall and grabbed him by the throat. And he said it had him almost dead before he could even breathe. And he just had enough strength to tell his bear, "Sick him, Fido." When he did that, he said that bear gave a big leap and grabbed off the left paw of this cat. And when it fell to the floor, it was a girl's hand and had a ring on it. And he said she went out the door screaming like a woman and went right through the keyhole. He said that the blood was all over the place. He said he took the hand up and wrapped it up in a piece of paper, and said he was never bothered anymore that night after he lay down and went to sleep. When the owner knocked at the door the next morning, he saw that he was really surprised. And when the owner asked him, "Did anything happen here last night?" he said, "Yeah, a little." Then he showed him the hand that he'd wrapped up in paper. He held it out, and the man fell back. He said, "My Lord, that's my daughter's hand. She told me that this meal would never do me any good, and it hasn't so far." He said, "She's sick in bed this morning. You come and go with me." They went up to the house, and when the man went in, he reached out and got a rifle. He said, "You come on in here in the bedroom." He went in there, and the girl was lying there very pretty, and she had the cover pulled up around her chin. Her father said to her, "Hold out your hand and let me see what's wrong with you." And she put out her right hand. She wouldn't hold out the left one, and he forced her. He took the cover and pulled it down so that they could see that her left hand had been chewed off. Then her father shot her. Of course, that was all he could do, for she had given herself to the devil to become a witch to get back at her father for making her live out there in the woods, away from her friends of city society. And we're going to talk about the Witch of Booger Hole. One of the most interesting witch stories I have ever found had its origin in Clay County, West Virginia, on Big Otter Creek at a community which was once known as Booger Hole. The story was told to me by the granddaughter-in-law of the woman who was said to be a witch. Now in the story, the witch woman is simply called Grandma. Now it was back about the beginning of the century that Grandma lived at a place called Booger Hole on Big Otter Creek. Now Grandma had a mare that she called Old Fanny. Now one day a young fella named Andrew came to Grandma and said, "I'd like to borrow your mare to do a little plowing." Grandma said, "All right, Andrew. You can use her if you don't work her too hard, and be sure to feed her well." Well, after 3 days, Andrew fetched Old Fanny back, and when Grandma looked at her, she said, "Andrew, you've ruined my mare. You worked her too hard, and she looks mighty peaked. Now, Andrew, I'm going to ride you every night till you're just as peaked as Old Fanny." Well, some folks around said that Grandma was a witch and that she could do strange things. I don't think Grandma ever witched anyone, but then she might have done it. Anyhow, Andrew said that she came in of a night and put a bridle on him and rode him all over Pilot Knob. He'd wake up in the morning all tired out with burrs in his hair and his mouth sore from the bridle bit. This went on till Andrew was almost crazy. Grandma lived in a little log house that had been used at one time as a schoolhouse. It didn't have lights or glass in the windows, but Grandma kept a quilt hanging over the window at night. Now one night someone raised the quilt and shot poor old Grandma as she was a-setting in a chair.
I went in there right after she was shot, and I saw Grandma with her arms hanging down over the sides of the chair, and the blood running down. Well, they accused Andrew of the murder, and they arrested him, but they didn't have any evidence against him, only that they said Grandma had put a spell on him, so they let Andrew go. Now, there's another part to the story that some folks don't know about. There was a man who had come to this community whose name was Henry Hargis. Now, he was a stonemason, and he built chimneys for a lot of folks around here. People said he kept money around him all the time, for a lot of folks didn't trust the banks to keep their money. Now, Henry Hargis disappeared, and nobody seemed to know what had become of him, though a lot of folks thought there had been foul play somewhere. Grandma thought she knowed one of the men who had killed Henry Hargis. So they say she put a spell on this man's horse so that he couldn't catch it in the field. The horse had always been tame, but now every time the man would come near it, it would kick and bite. He had an idea that Grandma had put a spell on his horse, so he went to her and begged her to take the spell off his horse. She said, "All right, I'll take the spell off your horse if you'll tell me where Henry Hargis is buried." Well, he finally told her. It was not long after that when we were in a room. There was Grandma and some other woman, and I was there with my little baby. I had been married the year before to Grandma's grandson, and I was holding my little baby in my arms. Now, Grandma said I could light my pipe. She always smoked a clay pipe. And before it goes out, I could take you to where Henry Hargis is buried. I tried to get Grandma to keep still, but these women had already heard her. Well, it was not long after that when they shot poor old Grandma, and I always did believe that these women told their husbands that Grandma knew too much, and that's why they killed her. All right, we're going to talk about the sad death of Mary Fisher. Now, Aunt Mary Gaynor Wilson, who lived at Tanner, Gilmer County, who sang many songs and told stories for me, one day in 1930, told me this unusual witch story. Young Mary Fisher was about 17 at the time, and she and her mother were sitting in the front room of their home. Miss Fisher looked out the door and saw an old woman approaching the house. "Mary," said Miss Fisher, "there comes that old witch. Now, if she comes in the house, don't let her pick up anything and carry it away with her, for if she does, she can put a spell on us." When the old woman came to the door, Miss Fisher told her, "Now, we don't want you to come in this house, for you're a witch and everybody knows it." Lots of people had said that they knew this old woman could do strange things, and they were pretty sure she was a witch. Well, the old woman was insulted. She walked right down the path by the garden, leaned over the fence, and picked a leaf of lettuce from a lettuce bed that Mary Fisher had planted. The old woman turned to them with the lettuce leaf in her hand, waving it and laughing. It was only a short time till Mary Fisher got sick and began to waste away. They knew that she had been put under the spell by that old witch woman. They got a witch doctor who tried various cures, but he couldn't do anything for her, and she faded away and died. Mary was a good singer, and she sang quite a bit. She had an instrument with 3 strings that she sometimes played. The song that she sang most in the last days before she died was "What Shall I Give to Thee?" Now, Mary had a big shepherd dog that used to lie at her feet, and when she sang this song, the dog would be disturbed and would run around her. This is the song she sang. "What shall I give to thee? Dear, we must part. Something to hide away close to the heart. Give me an ivy leaf fresh from the vine. Give me an ivy leaf green as the pine. What shall I give to thee? Life is so strange. All I could offer thee surely must change. Give me an ivy leaf fresh from the vine. Give me an ivy leaf green as the pine." All right, we're going to talk about the witch doctor's silver bullet. Miss Robert Petrie of Raleigh County, who told this story, said she knew it to be true because she knew the people. "I lived by an old woman who said she was bewitched. Her son lived right below me in a house, and when my husband would be away working at night, this old woman would come and stay with me. Her name was Sarah, and she had this oldest son before she was married, and she lived with him. She said that there was a woman who lived up on Clear Creek who got jealous of her, and she said that when she was in bed with this baby, when it was born, she said that she could see this woman coming in, but her mother couldn't see her. She said she'd come right through the keyhole of the door, and she'd stick pins in this baby, and the blood would come out. She'd just do things to get even with her. Well, her daddy went to an old witch doctor that lived up there about above Talcourt. When he came in, he asked for bullet molds. People had those old rifles, and they used bullet molds to mold the bullets. And he had a package of needles in his pocket. She said he took out 9 needles and broke the point off one of those needles. And he said, "I'd like to have a big piece of cardboard." They had a great big log house, and they burned wood in the fireplace. Now this old man, who was a witch doctor, got the pasteboard and drew a picture of a woman, making the toes and all. He said, "We don't want to hurt her too bad. I think I'll just shoot off one of her toes." He said, "That'll stop her from doing these crazy things. You know, this witch would pinch the baby and do all kinds of things, but her mother, her father, and her sisters couldn't see her." So this old man took her picture and nailed it up on a big oak tree in the yard. Then he stepped back a pace and took the rifle and shot the big toe off the right foot. And he said, "Now they'll be here to borrow something before long." Well, sure enough, they came to borrow turpentine. They said this old woman was chopping wood and cut the end of her big toe off, and they wanted the turpentine. They said they didn't let her have the turpentine. The violent witch. In most of the witch stories which I have recorded, the witch doctor is able to take the spell of the victim before death occurs. Now, Miss Robert Petrie, who told this story, was sure that it was true, for all of the people were known to her grandmother. Now, John Gerald down here, who died a few years back, had 2 sons. My grandmother told me this. There was an old woman got mad at them because she was always borrowing things from them. And finally they quit letting her have things because she would never bring anything back that she had borrowed. Well, my grandmother said that this old woman would come through the keyhole of the door with a hammer, and she beat one of the boys with the hammer till he finally died, with the blood gushing out of his ears and his mouth. Now, even when they stopped the keyhole up, she would push through it and attack this boy. Finally, the father made a silver bullet, and he went to that old woman and showed her the bullet. He said to her, "Now we know you're a witch, and you've caused the death of our boy. I'm a-telling you right now, if you ever do anything more to any of my family, I'm a-going to kill you with this silver bullet." And she begged him not to hurt her, and she promised him that she would never do anything to harm anybody. My grandmother knew this woman, and she knew her to do strange things. But this took place before I was born, and I'm telling it to you just as my grandmother told it to me. But grandmother knew her to do things like that. All right, we're going to talk about the Witch of Buck Run. Now, Miss Eugenia Roberts was one of my students in folklore in an extension class at Parkersburg in 1950. Miss Roberts was from Work County. She told me the stories about Mary Leadham of Tyler County. Miss Roberts said her grandfather told her about Mary, who lived almost a century ago. Now, Miss Leadham was a stooped and crippled old lady. One could always hear her coming by the tap, tap, tap of her cane as she walked along the country road. Her back had been broken in an accident when she was a girl. People thought she was strange, which gave rise to the stories in the neighborhood that Mary was a witch. She was a frequent visitor in the Taylor family home. The good yellow cream of the Taylor's cows had for years been churned into butter and traded at the village store for the weekly supply of groceries. Now, one day, after Mary Leadham had visited at the Taylor home, one of the girls got the churn ready and began to churn. She churned for about an hour, and still there was no sign of butter. No matter how hard she churned, the butter would not come. This was a very serious thing for the Taylor family, for they depended on the butter to trade at the store. Word got around very soon among the neighbors that the Taylors couldn't get butter from their cream. Now, since the trouble started right after Mary Leadham had been there, they were pretty sure that she had put a spell on the cream so that no butter would come. Now, one of the neighbors suggested that they break the spell by heating a butcher knife until it was red hot and then plunging it into the churning of cream. She said this would break the spell, and when they had done this, a visitor would come and want to borrow something. This visitor would be the witch. Friday morning was the time to churn so that the fresh butter could be taken to the store on Saturday. As usual, the cream would not turn into butter. The butcher knife was then heated to a cherry red and thrust in the churn of cream. Only a little more churning was necessary to produce the usual large amount of butter. Tap, tap, tap sounded on the boardwalk leading up to the house. There was the bent figure of Mary Leadham. "Miss Taylor, could you loan me a teaspoon of baking soda?" asked Mary Leadham. I've a burn on my leg and would like to put some soda on it." And there on the leg was a large red welt in the exact image of a butcher's knife. Now the witchery of Mary Leadham. Miss Roberts had another story about the woman who was thought to be a witch, Mary Leadham. Now there was a young farm couple who lived on Short Run in Tyler County, West Virginia. Since both of them worked out in the field together quite often, they had to have someone to take care of their only child, a little baby girl. They hired Mary Leadham to stay in the house to take care of the baby and to do some light housework. Now one day the couple went out in the field, leaving the baby in its little bed sleeping peacefully with Mary Leadham looking after her. They hadn't been in the field very long when Mary came screaming for them to come to the house. When they got to the house, they found their baby dead in her bed. They accused Mary Leadham of being a witch and of putting a spell on the child so that it died. Of course, Mary denied it, but she was forced to leave. She was then taken in by another family to do housework. The father of this family said he didn't believe in witchcraft and that he was not afraid of Mary Leadham. Now Mary used to sit at her spinning wheel as the children gathered around watching her spin. But the biggest attraction was the little white mouse that would climb on top of the spinning wheel and sit there while Mary spun. Then it would disappear mysteriously. No one seemed to know where it came from, but it was thought to be a result of the witchery of Mary Leadham. The mysterious doe. Witches are supposed to have the power to put a spell on a hunter's gun so that it will not shoot straight. There was a time when there was a lot of game in these woods, and some people depended on hunting to supply their meat. They could sell the deer hide for a pretty good price and get enough money to buy things at the store, such as coffee, salt, and cotton goods. But Miss Lenore Danley of Gilmer County told me the story about a man who was a very good hunter. Now nobody could shoot a rifle better than John Stallnacker, but it got so that for some reason he could not shoot straight at all. In the evenings he would go out, and every time he went he would see a large doe. Try as he would, he could never hit it. There was an old woman who lived not far from his place, and lots of folks said they thought that she was a witch. Now he was pretty sure that this old woman had put a spell on his rifle so that it wouldn't shoot straight. He made a silver bullet, and the next time he saw the doe, he shot at it and hit it in the leg. It ran, but he followed it by the trail of blood, and it led him right straight to the door of the old woman, who was thought to be a witch. He knocked at the door, and one of the girls came to the door and told him that Grandma had hurt her leg very bad and couldn't see anyone. He knew that this witch had turned herself into a doe, and when he shot the doe, he was really shooting the old woman. Now after that he had no trouble with this. This one's a witch's spell taken off. The story of the widow Danby was contributed by Gail Miller, a student in the folklore at Glenville State College in 1950. Now when Jim Gates got married, he built himself a little house over there just above the mouth of Wildcat on land that his pa had given him. And Jim and his wife moved in there. Old widow Danby and her daughter lived up the hollow a piece from where Jim lived. Now, they called her Widow Danby, but actually she had this girl and was never married. Jim went with the girl for quite a while, and they say her mother wanted her to marry Jim. But Jim met this other girl, and it wasn't long till they got married. Jim had always been a good hunter ever since he was just a small boy. They say his pa was a good hunter, and he taught Jim how to handle a rifle. Just a little after Jim and his wife moved in there, Jim went out hunting, thinking he could get a deer for his wife. Jim said he saw at least 5 deer not very far from his house back on the ridge. Now, one of them was so close that he said he knew he couldn't miss it, but he said he couldn't hit anything. Finally, he came back home just a raring, and he said he knew that old woman up the holler had put a spell on his gun so it wouldn't hit anything. She didn't like it because he didn't marry her daughter. Now, Jim said, "I'll fix her," and he went up against the bank and got a hickory sapling and named it after the old woman. Then he twisted that sapling almost double. The next time he saw that old woman, she was bent over almost double. Jim had no more trouble with his rifle after that. All right, the raccoon witch. Although it is possible for a witch to transform herself into any kind of animal she chooses, it is very unusual to hear of one changing to a raccoon. In this story, there seems to be no reason for Martha Pringle to become a raccoon except to plague the hunters. Now, the reason for her doing this is not given in the story, which was told to me by Elmer Legg of Clay County, who heard it from an elderly woman. Now, Mole Lynch was talking to my sister and me on one evening when we had called on her because her husband was poorly, and we wanted to ask if there was anything they wanted. "I hear Lige Fisher's hound howling again tonight," she said, "and mind what I'm telling you. We'll hear some bad news. It's a bad omen to hear a dog howling like that at night. It reminds me of that black windy night when I heard a strange sound a howling on the ridge yonder. It was just about midnight, and the next morning, just as dawn was a-breaking, here came Anderson Pringle to get me to come to see his wife Martha, who had taken sick during the night. Afterwards, I heard that what had happened that night. George Heater took his dogs and went a-hunting. The dogs treed a big coon. George shot at it, but he couldn't kill the coon, and George is a good shot too. So he got out a silver bullet he was carrying in his pocket, put it in his gun, and shot once more. This time the coon screamed like a woman, leaped from the tree, and ran like a hant. The dogs chased it a piece, but gave up and returned. And from that time on, Martha Pringle always had an injured side and never saw a well day. The witch's funeral. Back around the beginning of this century, a most mysterious event occurred at a cemetery in Barber County, West Virginia. An elderly minister whose father had been present at the funeral and had related the story many times to him told me this story. Now, there was a woman living near Nestorville who was thought to be a witch. Now, people said that they knew her to do many strange things. If she got mad at anyone, their cream wouldn't churn, their pigs would get sick, or some other bad things would happen to them. Finally, the woman died. A grave was dug for her on the ridge, and a great procession of people attended the funeral, most of them likely coming out of curiosity. It was a beautiful, clear day with the sun shining and not a cloud in the sky. A large crowd stood around the grave as the body was lowered into it. Suddenly, there was a loud clap of thunder, and a streak of lightning struck the grave. Smoke and the smell of brimstone came from the grave. Now, when the smoke had cleared away, there was nothing in the grave. Both the casket and the body had been consumed. Not one of the people standing near the grave was harmed. That grave is still there and is still open. Weeds and vines have grown in the grave, and there is now a fence around it. All right, now we're going to talk about the bewitched pigs. This story was told by an old gentleman who was 92 years old at the time. He firmly believed in witches and was likely to attribute almost everything unpleasant that happened to him to some form of witchcraft. He told me he did not want his name published. Now, when I was a boy, my grandfather came to visit at our home. my mother went away for the day and left our grandfather with us boys. Now, before leaving, she asked the old man to feed the pigs. Now, the old man was a lazy fella and didn't want to feed the pigs, but he finally did feed them. When Mother returned home that evening, she found that the pigs had not eaten their morning feed, nor would they eat their evening feed. She decided immediately that the old man had cast a spell on the pigs so they wouldn't eat. First thing she did, she went to the pig house and got some bristles from the pigs. Then she took those bristles in the house and burned them in the stove. This was supposed to break the spell, and it did. The pigs immediately ate both their morning and their evening feed. As soon as Mother burned the bristles, the old man left the house and did not return all night. She wasn't too much alarmed because he had often gone visiting at a neighbor's house and stayed all night. Now in the morning, some neighbors found the old man out in the woods asleep, and they brought him home. One side of his leg had been burned. All right, the Witch of Bull Run meets her match. Now this story was contributed by Lenore Danley, who was a student in my class in folklore at Glenville State College. Now old Aunt Eunice, a native of Bull Run, Gilmer County, was well known as a witch. She had sold herself to the devil when she was 16 years old, and she said the devil promised her that she would live 100 years after that. She was approximately 120 when she died. Now, Aunt Eunice was able to make people's cows stop giving milk. She could take a hatchet and stick it in the corner of the house, steal a dish rag and hang it on the hatchet, and that evening, the cows of the neighbors would give no milk. One time, Aunt Eunice bewitched Hezekiah Griffith, who lived on Crooked Run. Every night when Hezekiah went to bed, a darning needle would hop across the floor and jump on his chest. Finally, he couldn't put up with it anymore, so he went to the witch doctor to get a cure. Now the witch doctor told him to catch the needle and fetch it to him. Now the next night he lay in bed and pretended to be asleep, but when the needle jumped on his chest, he was ready for it. He grabbed that needle and held on to it, and early in the morning before daylight, he took that needle to the witch doctor. The witch doctor heated the needle until it was red hot. Then he bent it double. He told Hezekiah not to let Aunt Eunice get hold of the needle. Well, it wasn't long till she sent someone after him, and she said she wanted to see him right away. When he got to her house, he found her all doubled up with the cramps. She was bent just like that needle. She begged him to straighten out that needle after she promised him that she wouldn't bother him anymore. He put the needle in the fire to get it hot, and when he did this, she moaned with pain. When he straightened out the needle, she got well right away, and Hezekiah was never bothered anymore after that. All right, we're going to talk about the Witch Man of Calhoun County. Now, this story was told by Miss Eugenia Roberts of Wirt County, who said that every bit is true. Now, I grew up in a small rural community almost ever since I can remember. We were told that an old man who lived about 3 miles from our home was a witch. He was an object of mingled curiosity and terror to us children. At night we were afraid, and nothing in the world could have taken us near the old man's place. But in the daytime we became braver, and we often talked of going to see him do some of the many strange things that people said he could do. We had heard that he could even make a table walk without touching it. Finally, one bright spring afternoon, we set out just after Sunday dinner. Because we didn't want to be laughed at or stopped from going, we told our folks that we were going after wild honeysuckle. There were 8 of us, 5 girls and 3 boys, ranging in age from 10 to 14. And it took us about an hour to walk the distance of 3 miles to the little plank house where the man and his wife lived alone. It seemed as if there could be no evil in this setting. Now the honeysuckle and the fruit trees were blooming around the house, and the door was open, letting the sunlight in. The old man himself stood in the door and welcomed us. He was slight of build and somewhat bent and had curly white hair. Now after we had told him our names and something about our schoolwork, one of the boys asked him if he would make the table walk for us. He said, "Certainly, I'll do it for you." We stood near the door leading into a room which served as kitchen and dining room combined. It had a wood-burning stove and a large cupboard, and in the center of the room was a homemade table with two homemade wooden benches. Now the old man moved the benches away from the table to the edge of the room. Then he came back to the doorway, crossed his hands, and looked down intently, mumbling something which we could not understand, and then raised his head. When he saw the table begin to move about the room, it seemed to rise a few inches above the floor and glide about the room, almost as if there were wires attached and someone was guiding it. But there were no wires, and no one was touching the table. But there were 8 frightened children watching as the old man, with a strange half smile, looked down, muttering something again, and the table returned to its place and was still. Now the old man asked us how we liked it, and one of the boys said it was all right, but he thought we ought to go back home. But the old man said he would like us to see one more trick before we left. Then he took from his pocket an ordinary pocket knife and stuck it in one of the cracks in the wall, leaving the blade hanging loosely in the crack. Then, taking a bucket of water from the kitchen stove, he hung the bucket on the handle of the knife, which supported the bucket. Now, although it didn't seem possible, we thanked the old man for showing us the tricks, and he asked us to come back again soon. We never did get up enough courage to visit him again. Years passed, and the old man became very ill. He said that the devil was coming after him soon, because he had sold himself to the devil to become a witch. He would try to sleep, but he would rise up in his bed screaming that the devil was there, though no one could see anything unusual. They put a Bible under the old man's pillow, but he made them take it away, screaming that the devil would punish him for it. He finally died in terrible agony. The devil takes his victim. Now, one summer evening, I sat on the porch with an elderly couple, Mr. and Mrs. Homer Sampson, who lived in a small house located on a flat overlooking a wooded valley in Raleigh County, West Virginia. They had lived there for their entire time of their married life, 50 years. They talked of the years when their children were small, when they all gathered together in a circle to sing songs and tell stories. The stories were mostly of things that had happened to the parents in their younger days, some of them sad, some funny. It seemed to me that they were avoiding any reference to witchcraft, and I was somewhat reluctant to ask about it. I had found through long experience that it was a subject that people would not talk about, either because they thought their listeners might scoff at the stories, or because they considered it a dangerous subject. Now, Miss Sampson said, "I tell you, the devil is still around. When I mentioned that I had heard stories of witches and had read some stories which a friend of mine had written for the paper, Miss Sampson said, 'Yes, I saw one of the stories, and I cut it out and put it in my Bible. By doing this,' she explained, 'the witch could not harm anyone.' Now, there was one witch I could tell you about," Mr. Sampson said. "She's gone now, but I tell you, she did strange things, and lots of folks were afraid of her." "Did she claim to have the power?" I asked. "Yes, she did," said Mr. Sampson. "Here's the story he told me. There was a young girl who said this old woman told her how she could be a witch and do almost anything she wanted to do. If she'd go with her to the top of the highest hill here, and do what the old woman told her to do, she told her they would walk up to the top of the big rock there for 3 nights straight when the moon was full, just at the time of the night when the moon was directly overhead. The girl would have to swear against God each night. On the 3rd night, the devil would come with a big book and an iron pen. The girl would have to draw some blood from her arm and sign her name in the book. She would then be a witch. This girl told us about it. She told how she started up the hill with the old woman, but she got scared and ran back home. Right after that, the girl got sick. Her father was sure the old witch had put a spell on her, so he drew a picture of that old woman and burned it in the fire. The girl got well right soon, and that old woman wasn't seen for quite a spell. Some folks who went to her house said she'd spilled some hot lard and got a bad burn, but I reckon you know what happened to her. Well, I'm not sure I ought to tell you any more about her. She's gone now, but some of her relatives are living around here. But there's more that I could tell you. She got mad at Leif Perkins once because Leif couldn't let her pick blackberries in the patch above his house. It was an easy patch to get to, and Leif said he wanted the berries for himself. She told him he'd be sorry. Well, they say Leif was troubled by all kind of things after that. For a long time, he couldn't sleep of a night. Sometimes he would hear an awful scream like a woman running around the house, and when he'd go to the door to see what it was, he saw a big black cat running around the house screaming. He kept all the doors and windows shut, but one night that cat got in the house. He said it might have scratched him to death, but he just got to the fireplace and got hold of the poker. When he stuck the poker in the fire to get it hot, that cat just disappeared. He said it went right through the keyhole of the front door. His youngest boy took sick and couldn't eat anything that he could hold on his stomach. They got the doctor to come, but he didn't do him any good at all. Leif knew that it was the spell that the old witch woman had put on the boy. Well, there was an old man, Jake Dobbins, who was known as a witch doctor. He knew how to take the witch's spell off. Now Leif finally had him come in to see what he could do to help his boy. Old Mr. Dobbins, everyone called him Uncle Jake, came, and when he looked at the boy, he said he was pretty sure he knew what was wrong with him. Then he went out and brought in some small branches from a witch hazel bush. He stripped the leaves off the limbs and put them in the bed all around the boy. He put the limbs in the fireplace and started a fire with them. Then he took a big piece of paper, and with some of the soot from the fireplace, he drew a picture of the old witch with her name printed on it. Then he burned that paper in the fire that he'd made with the witch hazel branches. Now while the paper was burning, he kept murmuring some strange words. When the fire had all burned out, Uncle Jake said to Leif, "Now I think your boy will be all right." And the very next day, that boy was out of that bed, and he didn't get sick anymore. But they didn't see the old witch woman for a long time, and some folks said that she had taken a pretty bad sick spell. Well, this old lady got to be up in her 80s when she just disappeared. She was living by herself at the time, and when folks didn't see her for some time, they went there to see about her. They couldn't find any sign of her anywhere. They went out to the woods and looked for sometimes she had gone singing out in the woods, but she was never found. Some said they believed her time had come for the devil to take her away, for she had made an agreement with him to be a witch, and he could take her. It's an awful thought, but it's a true story. How witches got milk and butter. Now, most of the witches of whom I have been told were women who lived alone, who had little means of support. Although they had no cows to supply milk and butter, the fact that they often had plenty of milk aroused the suspicions of neighbors. When one of the neighbors' cows would go dry, the old witch was immediately suspected of having taken the milk from the cow. The following group of tales tell how the witch got her milk. This story, which I heard from Miss Lily Peters of Nicholas County, was told to her by her great-grandfather when she was a child. Now, there was a family of Schoonovers who lived at Mud Lick. Now, Miss Schoonover had several children, but her husband was dead. They didn't have any cows or hogs, and they put out only a small garden, but the children always looked very healthy. One evening, the children came to the home of Mr. Thomas Floyd, just as the Floyds were getting ready to milk the cows. One of the girls said, "Mother doesn't have to milk cows to get milk." Mr. Floyd asked the girl how her mother could get milk if she didn't have any cows. The child replied, "Mother puts a dish rag on a chair and milks, and we always have plenty of milk." When Mr. Floyd came back to the house after the milking, he said to his wife, "Now I know why our best cow quit giving milk." All right, the Milk Witch of Wood County. Millard Davis was 92 at the time. He told this story. He lived on Winding Road in Wood County. Now, in the village where I was raised, there lived an old lady who was said to be a witch. She did strange things, but nobody ever said she actually hurt anyone. But any time she wanted milk, she would go out and spread a towel over a gooseberry bush. She'd let the ends dangle down, put the pail under it, and proceed to milk the pail full of milk. At milking time, some of the neighbors' cows would go perfectly dry. I never saw her do this, but several others said they really saw her do it. Alright, the Gilmer County witch plays a trick. Lenore Danley of Gilmer County told this humorous story. Now, there was once an old woman who lived in the Sand Fork community of Gilmer County. Because she was so old and lived by herself, people suspected her of being able to do strange things, meaning that she was a witch. They said that she could stick a butter knife in a tree or in a wall, hang a rag on it, and the milk would flow freely. Now, a young man went to her one day and asked her to teach him how to become a witch. She told him to go to an old abandoned cabin and stay there all night in the dark. She said a snake would come into the cabin, and he should speak to it and listen to what it said to him. Well, he went there, as she had told him, and about midnight here came a big black snake into the room. The boy got so scared that instead of speaking to the snake, he ran out of there as fast as he could run. Now, the next morning, they found that boy up on the top of the roof, calling for someone to help him down. They couldn't understand how in the world that boy got up there, for there was no ladder, and the roof was so steep he had to straddle the ridge of the roof to keep from falling to the ground. The boy told them that when he ran out of that house, something lifted him up, just like a strong wind coming up from the ground, and the next thing he knew, he was on top of the house. They all had a good laugh over it, and always after that they teased that boy nearly to death. He never let himself get close to that old woman after that. The black cat is beaten. Now, many of the witch tales which have been told to me have already lived in oral tradition for many generations. Now, John Russell of Nicholas County said his grandfather had told witch tales many times. The first one was about two old women who lived back in the mountains. They were both accused of being witches. Now, one day, grandfather saw one of the women and made her angry about something. That night, just after he had gone to bed, he saw a black cat come in under the door. The cat went up to the fireplace, turned its back to the fireplace, and sat licking its paws. It sat there a little while, then came back and jumped on the bed and started choking him. He struggled with it and finally got it by the front paws and beat it down over a chest that was by the bed. It finally got away from him and went out under the door. He swore at it as it disappeared, and he told it never to come back, and if it did, he would get his gun and shoot it with a silver bullet that he had made. The next day, as he was going to work, he met the old doctor. The doctor told my grandfather that he was going to see this old woman because she had a bad fall and had almost broken her back. He was never troubled by the black cat anymore. Another way to break a spell. Mr. Russell then told me another one of his grandfather's witch tales. One of the grandfather's aunts lived near an old woman who was supposed to be a witch. His aunt was not afraid of the old woman and would give her skimmed milk. One day the old woman said she wanted whole milk, but his aunt told her that she had to skim the cream off to make butter. The old woman got very angry and went away in a huff. The next day his aunt fixed the churning and started churning. But even after she had churned for an hour, there was no sign of butter. Well, she just knew that the old woman had put a spell on the cream so that no butter could come. She put some cream in a skillet and put it on the fire, and then she took a small switch and beat the cream until it was all gone. After that, she got plenty of butter when she churned. The old woman never did come back to get milk after that. All right, how to kill a witch. Andy Russell, who lived on a farm in Pocahontas County, West Virginia, said he didn't believe much in witches. He had worked hard all his life and had always got along pretty well with other people. He said, "I know there are strange things that go on, and I believe the old devil is still around trying to draw good folks away from the Lord." He continued, "My mother told me one time how when she was just a girl, she had heard how a person could kill a witch. One was to make an image of the witch using wax or some other soft material. The image didn't have to look exactly like the witch, but the witch's name had to be put on it. Now one had to take the image to the top of the highest mountain, and just as the sun rose over the mountain, the image had to be shot with a silver bullet from an old mountain rifle. The witch would then immediately develop bad trouble in the same part of her body where the image had been shot. Now within 3 days, the witch would be dead. Now, I never heard of anybody doing that, nor did my mother ever say that she knew of anybody doing it, but she said an old man had told her about it, and he had said that he could do it if anybody ever got in bad trouble with a witch. Alright, this is White Bear. Now, Willie Bone, who lived in Naoma, Raleigh County, West Virginia, said his mother used to tell the story of White Bear. He said, when we were small, we used to gather around Mother like little chickens gather around the mother hen, and she would tell us stories. The one we liked to hear her tell most was the story of the White Bear. This story is not of American origin, but it is one of the tales brought to this country from old world sources. A more elaborate version of this story appears in Grandfather Tales, edited by Richard Chase, Houston Mifflin Company, 1948. Now, Mr. Chase edited the story from versions found in Virginia and North Carolina. Here's the way Mr. Bone told the story. There was a man lived way out in the country who had 3 daughters. Their names were Peggy, Maggie, and Nancy. This man had to go several miles to get to the grocery store, clean over the mountain, to buy groceries. So he got ready to go to this grocery store over the mountain trail, and when he got ready to leave, he asked the girls what kind of dresses they wanted. Maggie said, "I'd like to have a dress as blue as the sky." "Well," he said, "Peggy, what kind of dress do you want?" "Well," she said, "I'd like to have a yellow dress." He said, "Nancy, what kind of dress do you want?" "Oh," she said, "Father, I don't want any dress at all. All I want is for you to stop at the rose patch as you come back and pick me a basket of roses." So he went to the store and did his shopping at the store, and on his way back he stopped at the rose patch and started picking roses. There was a white bear in that rose patch. He came out of there and asked the old man what he was picking those roses for. He said he was picking them for his daughters. The bear asked about the daughters and asked what their names were. The man said their names are Peggy, Maggie, and Nancy. He said he picked some roses for Peggy and some for Maggie, and he had picked just one for Nancy. The bear said, "Well, you pick one, and I'll pick 2 for Nancy. And I'll be there at your home next Sunday morning." "Yes, I'll be there for Nancy." Well, they thought the white bear would come, so they fixed something like a hammock up in the corner of the house, and they put Nancy up in there. Directly they saw the white bear come a-riding. It turned out that he'd been put under a spell by a witch so that he could be a man of a day and a bear of a night. Or he could be a bear of a day and a man of a night. When the witch put the spell on him, she put a spot of blood on the back of his shirt and said that blood would stay there as long as the spell lasted. But if ever the blood could be washed out, the spell would come off. Now he said to them, "Where's Nancy?" And they told him, "Nancy's not here. She's gone away." And he said, "No, she's not gone." And he took a knife and cut her down from that hammock. Then he took Nancy away. He was riding one horse and leading another, so he put Nancy on the horse he was leading. He took her away and kept her for 2 years. Now after 2 years, he brought her back home, and they had a baby with them. Now this white bear had accumulated a lot of money, and he had 3 stores and lots of wealth. So Nancy introduced him to the folks at home when they came in. His name was Barry Warren. So they talked there a little while, and he got ready to leave. They thought that that's all there was to it, but he took Nancy right along. They stayed away 3 more years and came back again. This time they had another baby with them. There were 2 babies. They had a right smart of trouble over Nancy coming home that time, and she wouldn't go back with Barry Warren that time. So he started off up the mountain and went all out of sight. Well, she started off after him, and she had those 2 children. She went as far as she could, and she came to some woman a-washing beside the creek. She asked them if they would keep one of the babies for her. She asked them if they had seen a strange man. They said yes, there was a man passed here about 2 hours ago, and he told us women who were washing that whichever one of us could wash the blood out of his shirt, why he'd marry her. And they said that they'd both washed, but couldn't get the blood out. So she went on, and she came to some more women a-washing down by the river, and she asked them to take care of the other baby for her. She knew she was gaining ground on Barry Warren, so they told her that they'd keep the baby for her. They said there was a man passed through here a while ago, and he said if either one of us women could wash the blood out of his shirt, he would marry her. So Nancy said to them, "Give me the shirt." They gave her the shirt, and she went to washing on the old washboard, and she just washed that blood out right now. Well, she went on, and when it began to get dark, she called at a place and asked if they could keep her for the night. Well, they said they didn't know whether they could keep her or not, for a man had come to stay all night, and they had just one bed. Well, Nancy told them she would like to see that stranger, and they let her go into the room where he was. He turned his back to her. He'd heard her talking and knew her voice, and he turned his back to her. She pulled the blankets back and said to him, "You turn over here, Barry Warren, and speak to me." So he turned over and spoke to her, and she told him she'd come after him and told him where the babies were, and she wanted him to take her and go on back home with her. He decided he'd do that. They went back to where they collected the second child, and they went on to where she'd left the first one. They came on back home then, and he didn't have to be a bear any longer, because when Nancy had washed the blood out of his shirt, the witch's spell was broken, and he could be a man all the time now. So Barry Warren and his wife Nancy didn't have any more trouble. All right, a young man fixes the witch of Bull Run. Now this story was contributed by Lenore Danley of Glenville, who said an old man living on Little Bull Run of Gilmer County told it to her. He told her the exact names of the persons concerned and said every word of the story was true. Now, an old woman in the neighborhood had witched a young man living in the same neighborhood. He was annoyed very much at every kind of work he tried to do. If he tried to cut corn, he lost his corn cutter before he got to the field, or the stalks of the corn would not be there when he reached for them. Sometimes he could hear voices near him and hideous laughter, but he could not discern the words or the voices. If he called any of the livestock, it would run away from him. There just didn't seem to be anything he could do. Things got so bad that he finally went into the woods at midnight in the light of the moon, where he found a long, slim young hickory. He named the hickory the name of the old woman who had witched him. Then he split that hickory where it stood and twisted it till it could not get loose. Then he returned home, and after that he had no more trouble. That old woman took to her bed and didn't leave the house for a long time. When people next saw her, she was bent over. She told people she had got arthritis, but it was that twisted hickory that really fixed her. Now this is Recollections of Witchcraft. Now when I was a young boy, there was an old woman who lived not far from my boyhood home in Gilmer County, whom many people suspected of being a witch. Now rumors got around that she could do strange things, and many of the young boys and girls became afraid of her. I had been warned by some of my playmates that I must never let this old woman look me in the eyes, for if she did, she could put a spell on me. I'm telling this incident from my own experience to illustrate how the belief in witchcraft probably accounted for much illness from fear and worry. Now one day I was riding a horse and rode up to a farmhouse to carry a message to the farmer from my grandfather. Being too small to put my foot in the stirrup and dismount in the proper manner, I jumped down to the ground from the horseback. When my feet hit the ground, I fell to my knees and raised my head so that I was looking toward the porch. There on the porch sat this old woman staring at me. Her eyes seemed to be staring straight into my eyes. My first fear was that this old woman had put a spell on me. When I got back home, I was afraid to tell anyone about my experience. I became ill from worry and fear, wondering what effect the spell would have on me. After several days of worry, which made me almost ill, I told my mother what had happened, and on my fear of being bewitched by the old woman, my mother, who didn't believe in witchcraft, soon dispelled my fears, and I was immediately well in mind and body. I was at my grandmother's house one day when one of my great aunts came by on her way to the store. She stopped and was talking to my grandmother when suddenly one of my grandmother's hens crowed like a rooster. My great aunt said to my grandmother, "I tell you, there are strange things going on around here. That old woman has been busy again. You must kill that hen and burn it, or something terrible will happen." I do not remember what my grandmother did about the crowing hen, but I am sure that if she killed it, one of the visiting preachers had a good chicken dinner. Once our closest neighbors, who lived about a quarter of a mile from us, discovered their hogs running around in circles until they were exhausted. It seemed that they would surely die if they did not stop this incessant running. The father of the family tried to get the hogs to eat corn, but they would not even stop long enough to drink the buttermilk in their trough. They had never seen hogs act like this, and they were pretty sure that the old witch woman had put a spell on them. Now, the father got a piece of white paper and drew a picture of the old woman. He said it didn't matter if the picture didn't look just like the old witch, just so he put her name on it. Then he burned the picture in the fireplace, and the very minute the paper burned to ashes, the hogs calmed down and ate all their feed. They had no more trouble after that. Now, there were many stories about the strange things that this old woman did. She put a spell on the cows of one family so that no butter could be churned from the cream. The mother of the family, who was convinced that the old witch woman had put a spell on her cows, heated a poker until it was red hot, then plunged it into the churn. It wasn't long until she got more butter from the one churning than she had ever got at any time. Another family in the community had a cow that started giving bloody milk. They were pretty sure that the old witch woman had put a spell on that cow. They remembered that the old woman had come to their house and borrowed a pair of sheep shears, but had not returned them. They wondered what she wanted to do with sheep shears, for she didn't own any sheep. They supposed that she wanted to shear her big shepherd dog. Now they suspected that she had used the shears to put a spell on the cow. Fortunately, they knew what to do to break this spell. First, they found a large flat rock and laid it on the cow's back just over her hind legs. Then they cut 3 witch hazel switches and whipped the cow with them. The next morning, the cow gave pure milk. They warned the old woman that if she ever did anything like that again, they would know how to deal with her.